Are you ready? Stand by.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Hartman, and welcome to the Three Gun Show, the world's largest three-gun podcast. This is episode 240 of the podcast with special guests Reuben and Adam Maxwell. This is a really cool episode as I sat down with these accomplished shooters, and we basically took 4 general topics that I saw come up in the Facebook group Three Gun Talk, which is run by the Three Gun Show, with the help of 2 amazing admins that we really love. Anyway, we went around the table and shared our point of view on it. So it's kind of fun. We did one of these recently on specking out custom 2011s, and then again I did another one with Jay and James when I visited STI. And you guys told me that you like this type of format, so here we are doing more of it again. So let me know if you have a topic that you'd like to see covered in future episodes by some shooters, some people that I associate with. And if you have someone in mind, tell me that person's name too. That would help. Help me, help you. I want to give you what you want, so help me out with that. All right, so before we get into this one, some bad news. I have to mention that in the last couple days, as this is being recorded, there have been allegations of cheating leveled at a member of the three-gun community, and I'm so upset by this news that I'm considering doing a show about it. But this is like a very touchy subject, and it seems like when you call out cheaters in three-gun, there's backlash, right? It's like verboten in the shooting sports to call out cheaters. So I'm only going to do this if you want to hear about it. If you want me to let sleeping dogs lie, I will. So let me know your opinion on it. You can comment on Facebook or Instagram whenever you see the post for this show. You can comment on the website at threegunshow.com/240. And if you don't want your opinion known publicly, that's fine too. You can just email me, dave@threegunshow.com. But I'm really interested to hear what the community thinks about this, and if you think we should talk about cheating. Because unfortunately, we've talked about this before. It was on a Patreon episode, and so that episode will never see the light of day. It's going to exist on the Patreon feed forever. So only patrons will get to listen to that one. So if you are a Patreon supporter, you probably heard it. If you haven't heard it, you can join if you want. It's patreon.com/threegunshow, patreon.com/threegunshow. But yeah, that was an interesting episode. And funny enough, this new instance of cheating involves the same person. So I think that's enough on that topic. Let me know what you think in all those ways I said right there. Also, if you're listening to this podcast on the day that it comes out, which is March 13th, 2019, then it is my 39th birthday. I know, I act so immature. You had no clue I was that old. Thank you. I appreciate that. So if you enjoy this show and you want to do something nice for my birthday, do me a favor and tell a friend about the podcast. That would be really sweet. I would totally appreciate that. Other than that, I'm going to be spending the day with the dog. I'm going to be editing video for you, and then later I'm going to have some tacos. Now, if you are listening to this the day after the podcast comes out, which is March 14th, then that means that it's my dog Parker's 10th birthday. And he told me that he would also like you to tell a friend about the podcast for his birthday. And as a special bonus, I will give him 1 pat on the head for every friend you tell. So, as you can probably tell, I'm really trying to grow the Three Gun Show and the reach on this because I feel like this information is good for the Three Gun community and it helps the sport grow. And I love the shooting sports. I love Three Gun specifically, so I want to see all that grow and prosper. So help me out with that. All right, enough of me rambling. I appreciate you listening to the podcast. As always, you are very important to what I do here. So I hope you enjoy this discussion with Reuben and AMax.
Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. Winston Churchill, 1944.
Welcome to the show, guys.
Show where we read random posters on the wall.
It's true. Adam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome, man. Always a good day to be on the show.
Yeah, it's good to see you. So, up in your neck of the woods here in Wisconsin.
When they say when hell freezes over, right now outside, that it's how cold that would be. Like, that's what it would look like.
Yeah, it's pretty cold outside. I'm not
It's,
going to lie. Coming from Texas up here was a little bit of a change.
It's an Arctic paradise out there. If you're into that kind of thing, most people aren't. So, we got that going for us right now. Not a whole lot of three-gun going on out there.
No, not a whole lot of shooting at all. Reuben, how you doing, man?
I'm well. Thanks for having me. Some people want it to happen, some people wish it to happen, and some people make it happen. Michael Jordan.
Which is the poster right next to the one that I read. And he did it without looking, which makes him master.
You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky,
Wayne Gretzky.
Dave Hartman.
That's one of my favorite. Dave Hartman.
Applicable to three-gun.
Yeah,
He just
that's a
quoted a
fantastic.
quote.
Yeah,
Quoted somebody who quoted a quote. That is awesome.
I love that one. Well, guys, we're here to talk about some little topics, some minor ones that come up all the time on the Three Gun forums, Three Gun Show, or the Three Gun Talk, Three Gun discussion group.
Yeah, the Facebook groups.
The Facebook groups.
The forums, the Three Gun Show Facebook groups.
Various
the
ways you can
Patreon
reach
group.
out
Patreon
and touch
group.
Dave Hartman.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of ways to touch Dave.
And I think that there's a lot of implications with diving into that statement, but there's a lot of stuff that we could go over that I think gets brought up a lot, and people online like to talk about it, and everybody has an opinion. And sometimes when people don't have the same opinion, that they go off course. And I think there's some things that, whether it be controversial or not controversial, it's good to talk about it and, get people's opinions, but also to have just an open discussion about some things.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say to build upon that is a lot of times when you read something online, you're reading it in your own emotional state at that time. And so if you're like a little grumpy, it can come off a little gruff.
Yeah, and
so maybe someone's trying to be super helpful and it comes off like a little bit confrontational. And here in a conversation, we can actually get our points across.
I can see what your face
easy.
looks like, and I know your mood.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've all read the question, like, what's the best holster to buy for three gun, or what shotgun should I get? And it's like, man, I've had a long day. Just go look at the last 20 posts about this, and this new guy who was excited to get into the sport was like, oh, I just wanted to ask the question.
Yeah, like I
didn't
don't
even
know what
know that
happened
somebody
before
had
I
asked
got
that
here.
before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
we're
here to talk about those.
First, I think we should follow up on an episode that Adam and I did recently, which was on the 2011 pistol. And of course, Reuben, feel free to jump in here. But got a little bit of feedback on that. Actually, a lot of feedback on that. People really enjoyed that episode because we took a lot of the mystery away from like a 2011 platform, what to select, what to build, what to look for when you're actually shopping for one. Mm-hmm. And then the subsequent ones I did, one with Jay and James at STI, and then Aaron and Ben over at Hayes Custom Guns. People really enjoyed them. But one of the pieces of feedback I got was, well, what is an island barrel? Like if I have no frame of reference, I don't know what that means. And the other one is, what is a sight block?
Okay.
So
I got this one.
yeah.
So
go for it.
essentially, if you were to take the top plane of the slide, if you were to cut that sliver off, like the top, that would be a flat part on like a tri-top.
Yep.
So if
What's
a
tri-top?
A tri-top would be where they machine weight off the slide from its traditional round profile. They make a flat on the top and at 30 degrees probably on both sides.
It probably varies depending on manufacturer. But
anyway, if you kind of picture that flat top that's on a lot of
So
1911
instead of like
prototype
a airplane hangar that is like a half circle, if you're looking at it from the front, it's more like a barn that has
Correct.
a top and two sides, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So all that to explain like the flat part on top of the slide. If we were to cut that out with a laser and weld it onto the barrel so that that part doesn't move,
You weld a sight on the barrel. Yeah.
essentially
The part where the sight exists, and then probably like an inch and a half aft of that, like toward
Yeah.
the shooter.
Yep. And so essentially what they're doing, I guess that's the way to visualize it, but they're adding that's not what they do. But
Right.
They basically have a barrel that has a raised portion where you perceive that flat part of the barrel to be the slide, that is actually the barrel, and it doesn't move under recoil. And then they machine the slide around it to fit around that rib.
Right. And so it's called an island because it's just like one like oblong, I
Yep.
guess, piece of.
It's more of a peninsula barrel.
Yeah, it's more of
Yes.
a peninsula. Yeah.
When the
Island
slide
is kind of
cycles, like there's the ocean like moves away from it, and then when the slide reciprocates back.
Whoa.
The other thing too that I've heard
Tide slide.
discussed about this, that I think most people focus on the fact that the sight doesn't move, but you're actually also trading reciprocating mass,
Yeah.
putting
And
it on the
that's-
barrel instead of on the slide.
And that's the real reason to do it. Like,
Yeah.
realistically, I think it's a cool way to lighten the slide. It's really cool craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Like, it makes a cool gun. I have a couple guns that have it, and it's cool. As far as actual performance benefit, besides the reciprocating mass, I mean, everybody's like, your front sight doesn't move. I kind of call shenanigans on that.
I would say that for me, like the draw of it was that your front sight's not moving, and so I was thinking that, well, if my front sight is not moving in reciprocation, then I can keep an eye on it better. But in talking to the Hayes guys, they're like, nah, the big benefit of this is basically what Reuben just said, is that you can now plant weight on the front of the gun that does not move, and then the part that does move can be lighter.
That's correct.
Yeah, so I think that is a good explanation of what an island barrel is.
Initially, it was called a sight tracker. I believe that was an infinity term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a Schumann barrel.
Yeah. Well, then I think Schumann wanted to do it without infinity, so they called it something else. I think KKM wanted to do it. They called it something else. So that's where you get the term sight tracker, ribbed barrel, island barrel, all the same thing.
Everybody comes out with their own version of it.
Yeah.
And
it's a proprietary name for the same thing.
I think that they became probably, I don't know if affordable is the right word, but like they were brought into like the everyday 2011. Maybe that's not even really a term, the everyday 2011 guy, like the blue collar 2011 guys, right? Like with STI Epiero, was it?
Yep.
Epiero, whatever it is. And that I remember seeing at the Hornady match, like probably 4 years ago. I saw one for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was like, they were very hard to get.
Mm-hmm. There was a time that the Epiero actually came with a Schumann barrel in it.
Yeah.
And then that changed like a year or two ago. So it's not a labeled, marked, legit Schumann barrel. But for a while, that thing was an insane value because you were getting a premium barrel.
And I don't think that gun's even in production anymore.
Yeah,
I think STI has discontinued it. But yeah, cool concept nonetheless. And then,
But a buddy of mine has one of those.
Yeah,
Pretty cool looking. So it's an interesting looking pistol because there's not a lot going on up. So if you're looking at it from the side, like on the slide, not a lot going up front at all. It's just basically smooth steel all the way back to the back, and then it gets into like some funky machining, what looked like graphics, like on the side of like a 1997 pickup truck or something. So it has a very unique look to it. It's pretty cool.
I think a lot of them were like hard chromed and combination of hard chromed and bluing, or
they had a really cool two-tone look.
Yeah, the ones that or the one that I saw, it basically looked like just bare stainless steel for the whole thing. Obviously, it's not bare; it has some sort of coating on it, but that was the appearance of it. It's pretty attractive.
But to do that, it's a lot of machine work. It's a lot of intricate machine work. It's more tolerances, things like that. And so, to get into the part about the sight block barrel, that was an attempt at doing the same thing, without machining out the slot in top of the slide. So essentially they have that weight on the front of the barrel threaded on like a muzzle device on a rifle. Like they spun on this chunk of steel with the front sight on it. And then the slide, when it comes forward, butts up right against it.
Right, and
But
the
then the front
sight
part
is
doesn't
on the piece that's threaded onto the barrel, not
Correct.
on the slide as traditional.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. And we did talk about this with the Hayes boys, and they went into the history of it a little bit. Super interesting, so I'd recommend going back and listening to that podcast if you haven't already. But they come from like a long line of 1911 pistol builders, and everything new has been done before.
They're descendants of the Clarks, and the Clarks are a dynasty in 1911.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that covers those two. What do you think? Do you think we?
I think that sight tracker versus sight block. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think the sight block is a cool concept for a lot of things, but you still don't see as many of them as.
Yeah, I'd say it's more common in USPSA pistols currently.
In limited?
Yeah.
Can you have those in limited?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the only ones I've seen actually have like a comp worked into them.
Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of where it came from, is guys didn't want to pay, because at the time, if we back up 4, 5 years, to get an island barrel was that's like another $1,000.
Yeah.
It was a significant upgrade, but guys wanted that feature, and so scratching their heads in their shops, pistolsmiths were like, well, I mean, we already have threaded barrels. We put compensators on, and we made the slide. Well, what if we just don't put a compensator on it? What if it's just a piece? What if it's just a weight? And so it almost became sort of a blue collar way to get the same effect.
Well, and it's an economy way of doing it too, because you can take like a 5-inch gun, hack off, a half an inch of the front, that becomes the sight, and then you shorten up the rest of it, and then becomes like a 4 or a 4.6 or whatever it is. Same thing with like a 6-inch slide, and then now you've got a 5-inch gun with a half-inch, whatever. It's.
But the gunsmith that I was working with at the time, he's not in business anymore, but the time that was his ideas, because people wanted sight trackers, but they didn't want to pay for them, so that's what he was working through. I'm not sure if that jives with what the Hayes guys said about it, but that was my understanding from the lineage of knowledge that I learned from.
Yeah, I think with the if I remember correctly, with the Hayes boys, it was more of like a 6-inch slides are not readily available, and we're working on government model pistols. But how can we make the sight farther out there?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
That's where that started from that point of view, I think. Yeah, cool. So, all right. So that's what this podcast is going to be like. We're going to take little small topics, and we're going to.
That's all I have to say about that.
Chat about them. So, one thing that comes up quite frequently is belt setup. Like, what's the perfect belt setup? Which we had this conversation at lunch and on the way over here. Is like, perfect is so subjective that really you can only give like your personal recommendations. But I guess Adam, like if you're looking at like a 3-gun belt setup, like what specifically, like what qualities and what features do you look for?
Well, a lot of what I thought actually ironically became the package that you can get from Weber Tactical. So I was working with the company I was doing their marketing at the time. So ideally for me, a 3-gun belt is a 2-piece competition belt. 1 3/4 inches, the really thick belt. It's 2 to 3 pistol magazine pouches, a rifle magazine pouch, and then capacity to hold 16 to 24, 32 shotgun shells, depending what area of the country you're in, what match you're going to. In TAC Ops, that's pretty much what it is for me. In open, it changes a little bit where I place some of that stuff, because now I have to make room to put actual loaded shotgun magazines instead of caddies. Just by virtue of how your legs have to move and stuff like that, you're kind of limited on where you can hang those. But ideally, 16 to 24 shotgun shells, 2 to 3 pistol magazine pouches, and 1 rifle magazine pouch.
Any other qualities you look for in a belt?
I think I keep it pretty simple on some of the belts. I know like the ratchet systems for tensioning them are really popular right now. I'm not so much They don't really blow my hair back, but
I'm testing one out. Like, I don't know if you saw last night, but my belt has one on there, but it's zip tied because I'm not committed to it yet.
oh, see, I kind of look at them like I guess also holsters with a hood. Like, I believe you need some sort of retention on the holster. And I kind of look at those ratchet systems, kind of the inverse of the way guys are on the hoods for their holsters. Everyone tells me they don't need it until they get DQ'd because their pistol fell out. My perception, a lot of people really like those ratchet systems until they break.
Do they break? Have you seen them break?
Oh yeah. I've seen
Oh, really?
them break.
I've seen the old ones break. I have not seen the new carbon arms ones break, like the ones from last year.
To be fair, I wasn't keeping track.
Yeah,
of
when guys were taking ski binders off. Yep, those break.
Well, but that's a good point, Reuben. Is like guys are taking ski binders off. Like, if you buy them new, they're going to last for a long time. But if they already have like 1,000 duty cycles on them. Yeah,
so guy one goes and buys the carbon arms specifically made ratchet system that's in a package, and it's black, which is resistant to the sun. If you were talking like zip ties, like clear zip ties are not resistant to the sun. Black are the UV resistant, right? So plastic breaks down over time with the sun. So you take this guy who goes and buys the specifically designed thing, he loves it, and then you take the guy number 2 who's like, I want to do that, but I'm just going to go to Play It Again Sports and buy, an old set of ski boots and get like 5 of them for $20 and then takes them off. Well, that set of ski boots has been used how many times?
Been cold and then room temp and then cold and then room temp and cold and room temp, which does break down plastic as well.
Yeah, so I think it depends on which ones you get, but like I haven't had any problems in the last year with them. I think it's probably like anything else. It's like a $20 part.
Yeah.
It might be one of those things that you have to replace every couple of years.
Yeah.
Taking a step back, like my belts, I think for 3-gun, like, you can get more specific, but like if you're into the shooting sports in general, you have to have multiple belts. You have to have.
Yes.
How many belts do you currently have?
I have 6.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
So I have 4 Safariland ELS belts. 2 of them are set up on the ratchet system. Two of them are just the normal, the way they come, right, with the 2 metal pins and then the index and lock in. Then of each of those, I have 1 ratcheting system that is full of ELS attachment, the female attachment.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So I have 2, one with a ratchet, one without, that are full ELS clips. And then I have 1 that of each that has very specifically placed ELS female attachments. So like I took a belt that I wore for 4 years and then converted that, took a bunch of the females off and left like 4 female spots on the left side because I was going to shoot the Red October match. I needed a place to have magazine holders for only for rifle. So I have 2 that are completely full of the female clips and then 2 that have 4 or less on them. Then I have a CR speed belt that's specifically set up for USPSA production. I have 6 mag pouches on that one and a holster. And then I have another one that's set up for USPSA limited for my 2011, and that has 4 specific mag pouches.
Okay.
But, I mean, the thing that you have to think about belts is that, number one, not everybody's going to have 6 belts. In fact,
I have belt envy right now.
Yeah, so, I mean, and I think a lot of people would look at that belt setup and be like, oh, my gosh, how can you afford it? Well, they're $42. Like, it's not that expensive, right? I know people buy, like, cases of beer that are more than that.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
each belt without the female attachments are $42. Then let's just say you want to put 4 clips on. You have to spend about another $40 in the clips, but it comes with a male and a female. It comes with 2 male and 2 female and the hardware to attach those on. So it's like $100 per belt, really, unless you're going to put female attachments on the whole thing. Then you're looking at about $200 per belt if you're going to fill the entire thing with female attachments. Or receiver slots, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
So it's not that ridiculous, but I think the key is modularity and being like picking an attachment system.
That's
right?
what I think. I think AMax missed it on in his talk there is modularity. And if you're
Yeah. So
if you want to continue, go ahead. I was just gonna say like I move my shit around all the time.
yeah. So right now I have everything on ELS. I'm playing with, as you guys saw, a couple of new holster attachment systems. Like I'm playing with the Weber. I have the old G-Code RTS. I've got an old Blade Tech. I have an Invictus pistol drop hanger. So I'm playing with a bunch of different ones. But I think what I have learned is that your pistol hanger has to be like firmly attached to your belt. Number one, whether you pick the Midway USA $30 competition belt, or you pick a Safariland ELS or that new Weber Tactical fancy looking thing with I think the inside is actually like the plastic carbon arms belt that Mark sells, but it's actually got like the weave on the outside so it doesn't cut your skin when you wear it. I think what I've learned is if you're going to hang a pistol on it, the hanger has to be like screwed to or firmly attached to your belt.
Yep.
And then you can have a quick release system on your pistol holster so you can take it on and off as if you have a stage that doesn't require you to use pistol. But I think modularity is key. So like I said, everything right now that I have set up, at least for for shotgun caddies and rifle and pistol mag holders, those are all ELS. And you don't get a lot of torque on any of that, but you do get a lot of torque on your pistol. So I would say like stray far away from using an ELS 34 fork to attach your pistol to your belt.
That's what the QLS is for.
Yep, right. So, but I have seen it more times than not where the people are using the QL or
ELS.
ELS 34 fork to hold a pistol to a
Yes.
belt, and I have seen more times than I care to the pistol come off of the belt when it's pressure is applied or run into a wall or go through a doorway and don't remember that their pistol sits 4 inches off of their hip, right? So, but yeah, and like Adam said, like 3 pistol mag pouches, 1 to 2 rifle mag pouches, that's like optimal. But what's more optimal is if you have a stage where you don't need a pistol mag pouch, then you don't have any on there.
Yeah.
Because you start adding up the weight of your gear. So like loaded rifle mags, even just all of your caddies and everything without it is like you're looking at like 3 to 5 pounds of extra stuff on your belt.
Yep.
So the ability to take it off is going to allow you to move a lot more freely, and then also to go to a shotgun heavy stage to add more caddies. Shotgun light stage, less caddies. I think that's what I would say. In regards to the ratcheting attachment system or the ratcheting buckle, I like them if I don't have a ton of weight on my belt. I think if you look at how like an ELS belt works, it doubles over itself, and then you have the keeper. And I think that when you get to that point where your inner belt is on, your outer belt is then doubled over itself, you have like 2 inches, an inch and a half of like belt material, and it makes the whole system more rigid.
Right.
So I don't have those. I typically won't run that ratcheting belt system if I'm going to like have 48 rounds of shotgun on the belt.
Yeah. Yeah, with the ratchet system, it goes from 2-inch wide belt or inch 7.5, whatever it is. Is it 1.75?
It's probably
1.75.
1.75.
Yeah, so it goes from that down to like 5/8 of an inch for the width of the ratchet itself. So yeah, that's a good point. Something I hadn't thought of.
And what you'll get too is you can actually see a lot of people will just attach those ratcheting systems through one of the existing holes, which, as you know, are not centered on the belt. It's either the high hole or the low hole. So they just run that screw in. You need to drill that out and go in and attach that and Loctite it so that your ratchet can't, like, your male and female ends can't pivot on the screw.
Right.
You go in and, like, tighten that down. Use Loctite or Vibratite, because what I've noticed is that if you have like your rifle mag on the left side and your pistol on the other side, your belt starts to turn outward.
Yep.
And it's actually using those screws that the ratcheting system is on are actually opening up and it's pivoting.
Yeah, you can see that from behind when dudes are on a stage.
Yeah.
And if they've got like a 4-inch gap between belt ends or something, which I think is too much, then that ratchet system like struggles to hold it and it's trying to pivot, and then like the belt is either coming up or coming down.
Yep.
And basically, it's like putting like a shitload of tension on that one little ratchet point.
And it, like I said, with like a 40-round rifle mag on your left side and your pistol on your right side, that whole thing opens up and it starts. There's the higher the center of gravity on your belt, the more it's going to open up, and your stuff is going to look like it's flopping on the outside.
Yeah, and it almost gets rid of the point of even having like the big stiff ELS belt, which is intended not to roll over.
Yeah, I have an Adam, so he usually helps me attach my ELS belt. But
there's been lots of good pictures.
Yeah, but the one thing I will say about that ratcheting system is it's really nice if you're on a terrain match or like a whatever your definition of a terrain match is. But like, let's just say you go to the Vortex Shooter Source match. It's all natural terrain. I get it, but
I like how everyone gets defensive about that.
just around you, Adam.
Okay. But you're going to a place where you're like, reset takes like 2 minutes per stage, and you're walking hundreds of feet from the start of the stage to the end of the stage to reset. My belt is only on while I shoot.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do that with a standard ELS attachment because you're like, I can't see it back there.
Yeah.
And like, how do I make sure the keeper's on? And
well, and that's the weird thing. So we have our belts attached in the back, whereas like normal people
and USPSA a lot of times they attach in the front.
Yes. Yeah, exactly, because they don't usually carry anything up front like that. But we have shotgun shell caddies that we carry up front. Yeah. And so if we put that attachment in the front, then that takes up precious several inches that we could be using for shotgun caddies, which are very important to what we do.
It's all about real estate.
Yeah, for sure. And that's honestly like one of the things that I look for when I'm looking at like a belt setup and evaluating my belt setup is – so I used to just do like a normal rigger's belt kind of thing, which is like an everyday carry kind of thing. I had Kydex inside nylon. Yep. And then I would wear my pistol pouches in Blade Tech. The hell are those things called? The little clampy things that just clamp around the belt.
Oh, the Tech Locks?
Tech Locks. Thank you. Blade Tech Locks. And you can't move those side to side if you need to make way for like shotgun caddies or something like that. You have to like take them off, and they're kind of a pain in the neck to take off and everything. Can't slide them around like a belt loop or something. And then I ended up just having them on for like the whole duration of a match. Mm-hmm. So watching the people around me that had more experience, they all had ELS, and I noticed like a lot of times people would offer to lend me stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you don't have ELS," and so that's why I bought ELS.
Yeah. Here's another. We'll say a semi-pro tip of setting up your belt. So if you're setting up your belt and you're using like, let's just say use a G-code RTS system or whatever for your pistol, okay? Mm-hmm. So that's like 4 inches where that G-code system clamps over your belt, and then you have screws on the bottom that tighten it down and hold it in place. Mm-hmm. Okay, go to Amazon and buy I think it's 1.5 inches. You can probably find 1 3/4 inches, but I buy the 1.5 inches wide male and female Velcro, the self-adhesive. So it's like 3M adhesive, right? So I go on, and then your inner belt on all of them that I know of, your inner belt is female, right? It's Velcro. The fuzzy. Mm-hmm. And then your outer belt is the male, which sticks to that. Mm-hmm. So you take a 4-inch section of your belt, and then like me and Adam, we wear our Jeff Turtle on a Tech Lock on the belt.
Yep.
Okay, so that's another 1.5 to 2 inches of your belt. So that's when you see guys and they're running around, and that they're this side, let's just say their pistol side. Mm-hmm. I'm pointing at my right side, slides down, and it's not attached to your inner belt. And then you get these funky draws because you pull up and it's nothing is attached. So whatever the case, make sure that everything on the inside of your belt has male Velcro on it.
Right.
Because then you'll get like 100% contact.
Right. And totally agree. And I've fixed several students' belts that way that did have the Tech Lock.
Yeah. And if you go, and with Tech Locks especially.
Yeah, because they take up a ton of space, and especially when you start stacking mag pouches next to each other.
Yep.
Now you have like a 13-inch strip where there's no Velcro whatsoever. It's all on one side, and that's where you're putting all your bullets.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Velcro.
And that sags it.
It's like $17.99 for like 30 feet of each.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're in a pinch, you can get it at Walmart too. But that does sound like way cheaper than the stuff that I bought.
Yep. Get the Amazon. I think it's Home Basics, and it's a lifesaver.
Yeah. So the when you have ELS on an ELS belt, you don't have to worry about that because the Velcro is just all around the whole thing. And I guess there's like fasteners maybe that.
Yeah, don't worry about the fasteners, but the thing you do have to do is, like, I personally like pistol attachment systems that are not the QLS.
QLS?
Yeah, so I would never use ELS to attach pistol.
Right.
Kind of like we talked about,
Yeah.
but QLS is the big one.
Right.
So I don't use that, so that leaves me with like the G-code or the Weber,
Right.
which use the inside. There's a part that clamps on the inside of the belt.
Oh, okay.
So I always make sure that there's male Velcro on those parts too.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, so I don't use the G-code, so that's not something I thought of. So that's a good point.
It is, yeah, and the only reason I bring that up is because there's a lot of pistol manufacturer or holster manufacturers that's the standard that they use.
Okay. I can't.
And law enforcement.
Gotcha. Do you have one at your desk? I'll take a look at that.
I have one out in the truck.
I want to take a look at that before we go.
Yep.
I think the other thing on
snag a picture.
belt setup to think about too is on the holsters. I'll say there's kind of a lot of variety and takes on attachments, yes, but also like the drop offsets. Like everyone's got their idea of where the pistol should be on their side, and there's all kinds of crazy inventions on how to put the pistol somewhere where you're gonna get a good draw stroke on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've kind of seen it run the full gamut of, just direct mounted at your belt line, like most conventional holsters, to dropped all the way down, race holsters, things like that. I think what a lot of people lose sight of, though, is like the more that they put that pistol in that position where they're going to get a good draw stroke, the more it hangs out on a lever.
Yeah.
And they, so that you get a bit of a.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. You get like the holster bending, or not the holster, the hanger bending out and away from you.
Yeah.
As you're drawing up.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a tight tensioned holster, which we run in 3-gun because a lot of times we're using guns that are not our pistol and we're moving around with it. Whereas in USPSA, it doesn't matter. Like gravity can hold your pistol in there because you're drawing as soon as the buzzer starts.
Yeah, there should be no time in USPSA where you would be moving with your pistol on your belt.
Yep.
Not like we shot that stage last night where you start with your pistol on a barrel or on a table.
Right.
But that doesn't matter because you're not running with it on there.
Right.
And if you ever have your pistol on your belt at the start of a stage, that's the first thing you do is you take your pistol out.
Yep. Yeah, so I guess to round that one off, interchangeability with the people that you hang with is good. And it reminds me of something Ryan Cleckner said on the 3-Gun Show podcast is like if your crew runs MOA, your scope should be an MOA, so you can all be on the same page. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, the Weber Tactical / Springer Precision attachment thing that they're doing looks really cool. I'm not interested in it because, like, I have ELS and I have a shitload of ELS clips. But if I was getting into it, it's something I would look at.
Yeah, and
especially if, like, the people around me all had it too. Because if I want to borrow a caddy on a stage or if I want to borrow an extra pistol pouch, it's nice when you all have the same attachment equipment.
That's totally valid. The one thing I will caveat with, or I will say to kind of counter that, is that is just for my pistol. That's not for any of my other accessories. Now they do make them for other accessories.
They do offer it for offer for pouches. They do offer it for caddies and stuff like that. That's why I bring it up.
Yep. And I said no to that, but when I ordered it, but so like your pistol can be whatever.
Right. And so when I was looking for stuff, there was TMMS.
Yep.
Right.
Blade Tech
TMMS. And so my pal Bill and I were looking at belts at the same time because we both started with like just USPSA type setups. And I looked around at all the dudes we shoot with. I saw ELS, and so I bought an ELS belt. Bill bought TMMS because it was better.
Yep.
Sorry, Bill. Didn't realize I was going there.
Right under that bus.
I didn't mean to. I wouldn't have mentioned his name if I knew I was going there. But he bought it because it was better, right? It's a better attachment. And he's an engineer, so he evaluated it and said this is a better attachment. Doesn't matter if you can't share parts.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it doesn't matter that he's an engineer.
No, it doesn't matter if it's a better system if you can't share with your friends. is what I'm saying. So if
If-
you look
if
around and
you're-
all your
yeah.
friends have the Weber stuff and you think that the ELS is better,
If you have to share, yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Well, and tell me a time where you haven't had to share.
I have plenty of matches where I haven't had to share, but there's plenty where I have too.
Well, I will say that when you start flying to matches, like I've done once now, it made me more conscious about stuff I bring. Usually I just bring everything with me,
Yep.
and always have everything in the truck. So if I'm missing a pouch or if I'm missing a caddy, I just go to the truck and get another one. But when I was flying and I was conscious of the stuff I was bringing, it caused me to bring less. And then I get to the match and I'm like, oh crap, now I need 3 extra pistol mag pouches. And thank goodness
Yeah.
I had good friends with TechLock. So
Yeah.
or not TechLock, ELS.
And on top of that, another thing is when you go to matches, get stuff that's good enough so that you don't have to bring extra because of breakage. Like,
Oh yes, yeah.
I don't have, like, because of the stuff I use, like, whether it be guns, ammo, optics, belt gear, like, I try and buy the stuff that I'm like, I've never broken one of these. I'm hopefully not going to. And if I need another ELS fork, like, that's a very small piece of the, kit that I can throw in my bag.
Yep.
Whereas, like, oh, I should bring 3 extra pistol caddies or pistol mag pouches because these break all the time. Well, don't buy gear like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point, and we're in a very fortunate time to have so many different options where you can just move away from stuff that sucks.
Yep.
All right. I think we covered that one pretty well. Next one that I want to talk about is kind of a heavy overarching question, but I see this a lot, is like, how do you set up a rifle for 3-gun? So let's kind of narrow that down a little bit because it's such a broad topic. If you have, let's take this as like, if you have a, I don't know, pick something mainstream, Smith & Wesson M&P 15, right? There's probably a lot of those out there, right?
There's probably a lot of those out there.
Okay.
That's pretty safe.
Is that a pretty safe one?
assumption.
Okay.
Ruger 5.56 would probably be like
Is that even more?
probably
No.
right up there.
Well, Smith's been out longer. So.
For now, we're just splitting hairs, guys.
It's the same.
If you have
yeah, I mean,
a
it was
Ruger
a Bushmaster
5.56
before, yeah.
or a Smith & Wesson M&P 15 or a Bushmaster whatever.
Or a DPMS Oracle.
God damn it, people.
Right.
If you have one of those rifles and you want to set it up for a 3-gun, where do you start? What do you go about doing?
So we'll go back to the front. A stock that fits.
Okay.
There's a lot of stocks. Get one that fits with the right length of pull, which would be holding, for most people, it's holding your arm at a 90-degree angle, holding the pistol grip. Your stock should fit right in there. In your elbow, in the crook of your elbow.
Crack.
Yeah. So that, so a stock that fits, that means various things to various people. You can go pretty deep in the weeds on that. A good trigger. You probably will want a trigger 1 or 2 stage, but you're probably going to want a trigger that breaks lighter and cleaner than the trigger that came with it.
Right.
You will want.
Yeah, because most of the mil speckies are like 4.5 to 19 pounds or something like that.
Yeah, so take your trigger weight, divide by 6, and that's the poundage you want.
a barrel that shoots less than or 1 MOA.
Right.
About 1 MOA. You pay more to get less. But I mean,
And like, because you can't, at the range, you typically can't look at like, let me try every different type of ammo.
Right.
I think it's important to choose a 7 or 8 twist barrel.
yes.
Okay, because like we're going to be shooting 75 grain sometimes, we're going to be shooting 55 grain most of the time.
Yep.
So don't ask somebody like, if somebody's like, oh, well, yeah, that's a 1 MOA gun, and it only shoots that with 55 grain VMAX, and then you throw 75s in it, and it's a 9 twist, and it, keyholes them, like that's
Yeah.
bad news.
Yeah. I kind of stick to 1 and 8.
Faster the better. I mean, really, like 7 twist, there's no reason not to go 7 twist. You're not going to overspin smaller bullets.
Yeah.
Free flow handguard.
Okay.
Interacting with props.
Yes.
Muzzle brake. Despite what the tactical guys say, like you'll still have friends.
Yep.
And then an optic that fits your division. A quality
Awesome.
Optic that fits your division.
Yeah, and so within that, there's like switching handguards, right? well, you're gonna have to switch gas block too, with a lot of the guns that have
Yeah.
like a, you know, if they have like a A2 front sight or even like the bigger Picatinny rail chunk front sights, you know.
And so if you've got to switch your gas block to put a free float handguard on there, Reuben, what are you going to do?
What do you mean?
You're going to add an adjustable gas block, right?
It
you might as
depends,
well not.
man.
You can go into the weeds on all of those things, but yes, I mean.
But if you're going to replace gas block
you're-
anyway, you got to
if you're
buy
gonna
a new gas block.
if you're gonna buy one, yeah, a lot of people will.
Here's the
buy an
thing.
adjustable.
Here, like, if you're gonna take an MP15 and, like, let's just say you buy the MP15, the optics ready thing, right? Where it's like the front and rear sights are removable. So like either A, it has a carry handle, removable carry handle, or B, it has a flip up. Like a lot of these new carbines come with just a setup of Magpul Embus sights. So if that's what you have, and you're not, you can change a gun so much and look at your budget that you have changing this like cheaper firearm or less expensive firearm into something it's not. Like you could be $1,000 into this conversion process, or you could save money for something else and build a purpose-built gun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you could definitely put an adjustable gas block on it. You could also put a silent captured spring and a lightened bolt carrier and turn it into, so that the only thing that's actually original is like the barrel, the receivers, and the bolt carrier group.
Right.
I mean,
The way I explain to people is I would put a nice trigger in there, and I would put a muzzle brake on there. Those are the only two things I would do, because if you do anything else, you're better off just buying a whole new gun.
Yep.
And then you can take that trigger and that muzzle brake and put it on your new gun, or you can build one up from scratch and take that trigger and that muzzle brake that you already put in there. So it's not a lost investment in those two things.
I've done it several times with prize table guns or with guns that you built a long time ago when you thought that certain parts were cool and then they're not anymore. Like I've changed very little and then helped somebody else get into the shooting sports or into coyote hunting or into predator hunting or whatever, and like, hey, this is a good gun. This thing is sub MOA. You're probably going to want to put a new trigger in it and probably put a different muzzle device, but like that guy might only have $450 to spend, and that at that point, like, I'm helping him, and then I can get money out of it to put into a different project.
Yeah. I was kind of along those lines. I kind of go with something that I learned in motorsports that advice I got a long time ago. In that, we had what we could afford at the time, and we wanted the new cool and fast and light and spinny thing, and the veteran said, don't make it something it's not.
Yeah.
If you have a trail bike, you're not going to make it into a race bike.
Yep.
That's just not what it is. You can spend money, and you could, but it's not, at the end of the day, it's not going to be as good, and you'll have spent way more money. So like when we talk about those entry level rifles, I mean, don't. There comes a point where you're making it into something it's not.
Right. And if that is your goal, because like that receiver set is somehow, I don't know, nostalgic or sentimental to you, then go ahead. But you might be better off just like with a clean sheet build or a whole new gun. And which in that case, evaluating like a whole new firearm, then I would look at like free flow barrel, muzzle brake, great trigger, adjustable gas block, because I like that thing, and then maybe a lightweight carrier, maybe the SCS like you're talking about. So then you can kind of get a little funky on it. But again, I think we're all in agreement here. If you're starting from a like an M4 style, something that already exists, it's probably not really worth it for this game to throw like a ton of money into it.
Also look at like back when I got into this, a DPMS AP4 carbines. You remember those? Mm-hmm. So they came with a removable carry handle, glacier guards, but it was like a higher quality build from DPMS at the time. It was like their $1,199 gun, I think. Mm-hmm. Like that was a pretty cool gun at the time. And if you start taking that gun and parting it apart and changing everything on it, like, you might not really be increasing the value that much. It's kind of like if you take a house and you put a concrete driveway in it, really doesn't change the value of the house. It just makes it nicer for you.
Right.
So I look at some of those things like convenience features, and I'm like, all right, well, I really want to get into shooting. I bought this AP4 for home defense, and if you can sell that AP4 for $900 or $800 and not change everything, like it's still in kind of original condition, I guess.
Right.
If you ARs are kind of hard to talk about original condition, like it's not like a Remington 1187 or something like a gun that you might buy off the shelf for hunting or whatever. It's like original condition for an AR doesn't probably matter as much as it does for other guns, but you might be able to get offload that thing and then spend that money. Whereas if you change it, it's like, well, it's an AP4, but it's not really an AP4. It's kind of because it has the same receiver set. But, I put this other handguard on, and the guy's like, man, okay, I would have paid you the same amount of money for it without you dumping all this money into it.
Yeah.
So put a good trigger in it, put a muzzle brake on it, and run it how it is. And then offload it if you need the cash. But a lot of times I think maybe where we get hung up on as, I think, mid to high level competitors, we look at, well, if you're going to go out and buy something, then don't buy this. A lot of times we're talking to people who already have the gun.
Right.
Like, that gun's already in the safe. They're like, I bought this for home defense, and what can I do to make it usable for 3-gun?
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly like you said, Dave. Like, put a good trigger in it, put a muzzle brake, throw an optic on it, and shoot it.
And that's what I did. Like, I started out with like the plastic handguard, A2 front side post, and bus in the rear, and then got an optic for it, got a muzzle brake, Jerry Mitchell-like muzzle brake, $30, best value in muzzle brakes out there, and then got a trigger for it, and then eventually put a free float on it, and then right after that I built a whole new gun from the ground up.
Yep.
I guess in just kind of thinking about what we've been talking about it here, I would say the reality check comes in at $500.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you have an existing rifle, if you're going to spend more than $500 on it, you need to pump the brakes, be like, all right, what am I doing here?
Yep.
Should I just buy another rifle?
Dude, that is an awesome benchmark, because at that point, if you're going to like Reuben's thing, with just selling the rifle as it is, if it is that higher end one, you can get $800. Now you've got $1,300.
Yep.
Or if it's right now it's a down market, so you can only sell your M&P 15 for $500.
Right.
Now you've got $1,000 that you can put into like an actual race gun.
Right. And like when I was in retail too, like, I mean, we custom the custom gun, the parts rifles, ones that were, it started as a 6920, but they put all this stuff on it.
Oh yeah.
It's still a 6920 though.
The all the value in parts that you put in there is basically gone.
Yep.
Like, we wouldn't give you any additional value for that. And by the same token, guns that were manufactured were of more value, because everyone knows what
The
a
competency
Springfield
of the builder.
Saint is.
Yeah.
Everyone knows what a Noveske is. Everyone knows what a PWS or a JP is. And conversely, some people would try to sell some of those high-end guns. The fun example I have is a Noveske. A guy tried to sell me a Noveske one time as a factory Noveske, but me being the nerd that I am, I knew that it didn't have the proof mark, so it wasn't one.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it had a chainsaw lower. You have a chainsaw lower.
Yeah.
So if it has a chainsaw lower on it, it didn't leave Noveske as a rifle.
No.
So that rifle is really just the sum of its parts divided by 50%. Whereas if it is a Noveske Infidel, okay, well then that's a blue book valued gun.
Yep.
So keep that in mind too.
And then what I've found too is whether you're talking to a coworker, a guy you meet at the range, a friend, a family member, if you're like, hey, I want to sell you, they're like, hey, I want to buy that AR from you. It's like, well, what is it? Well, it's a 6920, but it's got like $700 in aftermarket parts on it. They don't know how to value that gun.
Yeah.
Like you said, you can add the value of the parts, but at the same time, like, well, it's still 6920. Like, it's still an IROC Z Camaro.
Exactly. It comes down to taste, right? Like if you
Yeah.
put shitty wheels on that IROC Z Camaro, someone's not going to want to buy the whole car.
Yeah.
Because of wheels
One
that can
thing.
be replaced. So if you put, some crappy basement handguard on 6920, it could lose some of its value.
Yeah. And so disclaimer to Smith & Wesson and Ruger and Bushmaster and DPMS, we're not talking badly about any of the products, but it's not a purpose-made race gun. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're great for the purpose that they were built for, not for the specific small use case that we use. So.
Absolutely.
There's exceptions too. Like, I mean, look at like Grand Thumb on YouTube. How many barrels do you think he's shot out of his Mark 18?
Yeah, doesn't make it a crappy gun.
It's not a crappy gun. It's just he shot the barrel out. He put another good barrel in it. It's still a good gun.
Yeah,
you know? So
yeah.
I mean, same thing can happen with all of those
sure.
as police trades and things like that. I mean, they can get a new lease on life too.
So are we going back to ideal 3-gun rifles, or are we?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I was going to move on, but I forgot that. Go for it.
I mean, Adam, go ahead.
No, he already did his, didn't you?
I would say that
we talked about how to modify it.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
I guess
we just had lunch.
I might have.
I'm in that coma a little bit.
Yeah, I might have misunderstood your question a little bit. I was just like, if we were just gonna boil it down to what features does a gun have to have, you know, everyone's gonna have their own spin, but a stock that fits, a good trigger, free float handguard, a good barrel, and a muzzle brake, and a quality, the best optic you can afford that's appropriate for your division.
Yeah, and
that means different things to different people. Like, I could run down what I think all of those things are, but that's going to be completely different than what Reuben thinks, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, to put it into terms of, like, motocross or snowmobiles or four-wheelers, like, you still have to enjoy driving it and riding it, right? So to the guy who's like, well, you know, I only like 18-inch barrels on 3-gun rifles, and I'll say, like, hey, if you don't shoot Blue Ridge or Hard as Hell or, you know, like, any of the big Texas matches, like, you don't really need an 18-inch barrel. But then to the guy who says, like, oh, I'll only ever use a 10.5-inch barrel. I mean, I remember matches that you and I went to where we were fighting some pretty crazy wind, and you had to look back in the truck and see, like, oh, that 14.5-inch upper is looking pretty good right now.
Yep.
So find something that you like shooting, number one. Find, you know, and this is building on top of what Adam says with a stock that fits, good trigger, solid components, and a barrel that's accurate. I typically tend to stray away from chrome line barrels. I like stainless barrels or, you know, carbon steel barrels. But, like, typically we'll stay away from the chrome line stuff. There's been barrels that have had black nitride coatings, you know, all different coating and plating processes applied. I typically think that the more accurate barrels are just going to be a stainless barrel. Have a gun that's balanced. I personally like a butt-heavy gun. I mean, I
do as well.
I think that people who end up shooting a variety of matches typically like a butt-heavy gun. I mean, there's definitely a lot better pointability. I think the gun sits better in your pocket of your shoulder. That's what I like. But again, like, get something that's accurate, reliable, shoots soft, find ammo that works good in your gun. Don't just, you know, buy bulk pack ammo off the shelf and be like, oh, this is a crappy barrel because it doesn't shoot. Well, like, go and buy a couple of boxes of match ammo and see what the gun can actually do. You don't have to spend all of your money on that ammo and shoot it all the time, but knowing that that gun has the capability to shoot, so that if you go out to a match where you're going to be shooting 400, 500, 600-yard targets, that you know that you can do that and spend the extra money on the ammo for that stage. But I think having quality components is really important, because a lot of times we're traveling to different places, shooting 10, 12, 14, 18 matches a year. Every one of those matches costs money, and there's nothing worse than equipment not working when you're on a stage.
Yeah.
So I think don't ever, if you're a new shooter, I would say this is actually something really important. Don't ever look at a shooter who's been doing it a long time and has higher quality gear. Don't ever look at that person and be like, well, I don't need that Gucci barrel, or I don't need that carbon fiber this, or I don't need that. Well, when you've been doing it for long enough, you tend to realize is that it's cheaper to buy the good stuff that lasts longer and that doesn't break, right? If you go to a match and your rifle, something happens to it, and you throw away a $300 match fee, a $500 plane ticket, and $1,000 in food, lodging, and other costs of the match, well, that barrel that you just spent, you know, $300 on rather than a $500, or $200 rather than $400, you just threw out all the cost of that, or, you name it, whatever the part is that you say, like, I can do anything that guy can do with that fancy stuff, and I spent half the money. There's a reason why people use good gear, and it's not because they got sponsored. It's because the stuff works. And, like, typically better gear has, if something costs more, it's not because the aluminum that they put into it costs more. It's because the research and development behind it costs more.
Yep.
Yeah. And, like, equipment that breaks or isn't performing top-notch at a match, like, that's equivalent to going skiing and breaking your leg on the second day. Like going to Breckenridge and just wrapping it around a tree. It's like you already flew out there. You already paid for the hotel room. You can't ski now because your leg's broken.
Yep.
It's kind of like the same thing. Like if you get all the way to a match and your trigger takes a dump, like, sorry, but like you just ruined your vacation. Or your vacation is now ruined.
Yeah. And don't be intimidated by the fact that there are always going to be people that buy the higher quality, the higher end gear. You're not going to change that. But don't be intimidated by it. I mean, if you can't afford it, then don't buy it. But yeah, you wait till you can.
Yeah, totally.
But I think when people that have been shooting for a long time don't buy the expensive gear to show off. They buy the good gear because they're spending money in the long haul for. They're trading their dollars for extended durability in life and lower likelihood of breaking down on the range.
Well,
it's not to show off.
I like what you said, too, about the ammo, too. Like, I mean, we don't – when on the rare occasion that we go out and live fire practice, like with our shotguns, we're not dumping double A's all over the range, But when we go to a major match, we buy good ammo because it's worth it, I mean, practice reps are practice reps. If you have a malfunction in practice, that
good.
You can work on various things that way. But like when you go to a match, like that's why they have match ammunition. Like that's what it's for. And that's why it costs more. You don't have to shoot that all the time. We don't.
Right.
But when we go, it's worth 5 cents a round, or whatever it costs. Because, you made the effort, you traveled all that way, you paid the money, you're there for the experience. Don't let a few pennies ruin your experience,
Yep.
Yeah, the expensive part about shooting 3-gun is not the gear. It's everything else.
Yes, it is.
If you
as we did in the episode with Dave Horn, we ran down total cost of 3-gun. It's 100% the truth, man. Like when you talk about your flight and your food and your hotel and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, well, I'm not going to buy that 2011 because it's $200 more expensive. And then you're looking at flights, and flights are $500, and then you forget to book it. And then 2 weeks later, flights are $700. There went your extra money that you were going to spend on that.
Exactly.
Or if you put one too many boxes of ammo in your bag and you're over 50 pounds, it's $100.
Oh, yeah.
This is true. Yeah, so I pretty much agree completely with Adam there on the things that you need in a gun or in a rifle. Barrel length. Adam, you're controversial. You will go last. So you said, Reuben, you don't necessarily agree everybody needs an 18-inch. I like an 18-inch. I like the extra velocity. I like the way it handles. I will admit that my gun is very barrel heavy because of the heavy profile barrel that I shoot. But I do like the 18-inch. That said, this year, because there's like a huge movement all the time, lighter. Everybody wants to make the lightest thing possible, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I figure like, hey, why not see what's out there? So I'm actually going to be running a 16-inch barrel with a mid-length gas system this year as sort of an experiment, just to be able to speak to it from a more educated position. So I can, instead of just poo-pooing all over it, I can say, I tried that once, now I'll poo-poo all over it. So
yeah.
So I personally dig the 18-inch. What do you think?
Yeah, so if I'm making, and I'll say this, I don't have just one 3-gun rifle. Mm-hmm. I think it kind of goes back to holsters. And again, I've done it long enough where I've collected some gear over the years, and I'm very fortunate to have good connections and contacts within the shooting industry. So I have awesome gear. So I have typically an 18-inch barrel, and then I also have a 14.5-inch barrel. And whatever match I'm going to it completely determines what rifle I bring with me. Typically, I like to set my lowers up identically, but when I'm setting up uppers, I look at having like a lighter weight rifle that doesn't have too much weight out front. So typically, I would look at a shorter barrel, right? My 14.5-inch barrel is the gun that I'm going to shoot at matches with shots under 300, 400 yards. It depends, too, on if I'm shooting it in Texas, wide open with tons of wind, or if I'm shooting it in Missouri and it's all trees, everything. I'm not dealing with a ton of wind. Or, back in the day when Adam and I would drive out to Ironman and we'd have 40, 50 mile an hour crosswinds and you couldn't see the target. So
Still have nightmares about that day.
Yep. And there's a couple other names out there that probably have worse nightmares than us.
Yeah, that's true.
Story for another day.
Yeah.
But really, like, one of the biggest determinants in helping me decide what rifle to bring with to a match is looking at how much wind I anticipate having to play with.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at an 18-inch barrel. I'm gaining significantly better velocity than my 14.5-inch barrel.
Do you know what off the top of your head what the numbers are?
Oh, my goodness. It's not as drastic on the lighter bullets, but if I'm looking at, like, the 75 grain Hornady match, typically I'll run that at, like, mid-28s on an 18-inch barrel, and I have as low as 24.50 on a 14.5.
Okay.
So
That's pretty significant.
and there's going to be people that, like, well, mine only is 200 feet per second difference. I really don't care. I'm sure it is. But I care about you, but I just don't care about that.
Well, because it doesn't matter to you because it's not your rifle.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I shoot proof research, carbon fiber wrapped AR-15 barrels with 8 twist. Okay. So if I was looking at the difference between those two, I'm going to have the bullet in flight for significantly less time with the 18-inch barrel, and it is a direct correlation, the amount of time that it's in flight to how the wind affects it.
Mm-hmm.
So the wind is going to affect it a lot more if it's in the air for longer. It's not necessarily that's a whole nother discussion, but wind is going to affect it less if I'm running faster muzzle velocity. Okay.
Right.
So I'll look at the Vortex Shooter Source match in Texas. If I'm going out to Wyoming shooting the Governor's match, I'm running an 18-inch barrel for every single one of those matches. Back when we would shoot longer distances out at SUPs in Utah, like I was running 18-inch barrel there all the time.
Yep.
I'll run 14.5-inch for almost everything in the Midwest because we're really not shooting beyond 400 yards. And at Forest Lake, we're shooting in a tunnel. So
Yeah. I'll be honest, when you said that you run a 14.5 or that you like a 14.5, I was kind of confused by that because I feel like every time I've seen you, you've had an 18-inch. But then as you just went over that list, I realized like every time I've seen you has been at one of those big matches.
Yeah. So
big distance matches.
And he probably had a 14 in the car.
Yeah, if it's like a UML match where you can switch uppers, I've got a 14.5 stashed somewhere ready to go, zeroed in. All I do is put it on the same lower. I'll caveat that by saying 14.5-inch pinion welded.
Right.
Okay, so for anybody out there who's gonna make a big deal about that,
ATF's over your shoulder there, eyeballing us.
Yep. Jimmy's got that. So, but yeah. Really, it depends on the match. It depends on what I'm going to do. I personally think that 14.5-inch should have been like what the accepted barrel length for AR-15s. I think
I would agree with that.
There's very few people that you can see that are like, oh, my arms are so long I can't even hold a 14.5. Like you don't run into that very much, and they're very maneuverable. It's kind of the minimum point for terminal velocity too with 5.56 with the 77 or 75 grain ammo. It's kind of like you don't want to really go too much below 14, 13.7. You start to lose velocity.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to get into like 10.5 or something stupid like that.
And pointability too. The shorter barrels for the bay type stages, the 14.5 is just being that it's a shorter gun. It's more wieldy. I can point it faster.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking also at different aspects of choosing a barrel, it's like typically the 18s are going to feel softer. And when you're shooting it, it's going to feel soft.
Yeah, for sure.
Now,
especially with that rifle length gas system.
Yeah, so you can do intermediate 14.5, which
Right.
feels almost the same as an 18-inch rifle.
It's a select few companies that make those, though.
There is, yeah. And to the guy who says, like, well, I'll just put an adjustable gas system on it. That doesn't do the same thing.
No, it doesn't.
Your dwell time is not the same as the amount of gas you're letting through. It's not a direct correlation. So now, ceteris paribus, keeping all things equal, like there are different systems. Like if you're running a piston system like Adam does, you can tune those things way down too. But the longer barrel systems or longer gas system is going to be typically you're going to feel a softer recoil impulse.
Mm-hmm.
It's like shooting 147s. Out of a pistol, the acceleration is slower in a heavier bullet, which is why they have more of a push instead of snappy recoil. So I always liken it to that. So
It makes sense.
And if I'm shooting longer range targets, it goes along with it where I don't want the gun moving as much. I want to be able to see my misses because I almost assuredly have a miss before I have an impact at long range.
Yeah.
It's very important to see your misses, people.
Yeah. Well, as you were talking there, you said, barrel length like a 13.7. And it made me think like, I shot that 13.5-inch Armalite for a year. And I really liked that thing. That was a really fun gun for fast stages and for shooting offhand. It was really cool. But yeah, I did miss the velocity when we got on those longer targets, especially in Texas.
And people will always say like, oh, you can't tell the difference recoil wise. I shot a 13.7 Armalite or I shoot a 12.5-inch PWS or whatever you shoot. Like I'm just gonna say it right now. Velocity is the real reason.
Yeah.
For picking an 18. If you don't need it, and I'll be honest with you, you do not see the sight movement when you break a shot is not as noticeable at a piece of paper 5 feet away as it is from a 12-inch circle at 400 yards.
Right.
So it's all kind of in perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And then kind of too, like some of what you guys are saying is as we shorten the barrel and we start talking about recoil impulse, we're getting into variances rifle to rifle, serial number to serial number.
Yeah.
Because as we shorten the gas system, we're at a more volatile point in the pressure curve of the powder as it's burning. So in kind of what ran into last year and started to change my mind a little bit on some of this, or giving me more perspective, you're getting a more consistent pressure and a more consistent burn, or your pressure at the port when the bullet passes it at the longer barrels. So you can shorten them up, and some of them do feel softer because the way that Armalite just turned out. Just the way my PWS turned out. Mm-hmm. It's awesome. But you take that same, 11.5-inch barrel in a different manufacturer, the way they set it up with that buffer system and that spring and this vendor and that vendor, could turn out completely different because we're at a more violent, that we're at a touchier point in the pressure curve.
Right.
And that's really what's driving the recoil impulse there is how much pressure is involved when it cycles the bolt back and when it hits the muzzle.
Yeah, and I specifically was, and you brought up a good point, I specifically was talking about barrel length.
Right.
Dave is talking about a system that was designed and sold together. The Armalite 13.7, the comp, the drilling out the ports, that whole thing was built and sold as a system.
Right. I'm sure that wasn't their first crack too.
Yeah,
no.
And so like, but if I'm saying like, hey, if somebody goes, what's softer, 18 or 13.7? Like, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, all things being equal. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've shot some pretty soft 12-inch barrels too, but it was built as a system.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that tends to be, when I'm shooting shorter barrels, I'm shooting systems.
Right.
Something that was designed to work that way. I didn't put them together. People a lot smarter than me with spreadsheets did that.
Mark 18, Knights Armament, JP, like Daniel, whatever it is.
Daniel
like,
Defense, Radian, PWS.
Yeah, these things were built and they were selected, and the parts that were put into it were built around each other.
Yeah. And even then, they can run they can run a little finicky. I have multiple specimens of the same model of PWS. Some of them I can run the gas lighter than others.
Yeah.
Just because of the way that one turned out. It works with less pressure, and the other one doesn't. Couldn't tell you why. But one's a match rifle, one's a practice rifle. But I think, to answer your question, I'm on record as being a fan of the shorter barrels, and I do it. Partially to prove a point, but that's not the person I am. I like the balance and the handling characteristics of them. Especially for when I realistically look at most of the shooting that we do in 3-gun.
Yep.
Like, when people talk about the ideal 3-gun rifle, the conversation immediately turns to long range. But long range is 5 to 10% of the targets you're going to shoot at a match. It's like, so
Very important.
Valuable
10%, though.
10%.
Very important, yes. But, like, if you put it in bigger picture, I was just like, well, do I really need a long barrel? So I started getting to the short ones, and I would agree with Reuben that the ideal length, if you can only have one, or like the standard by which the benchmark should be set, is 14-ish inches. Just like the M4, the real M4 in the military, 14.5 inches. And then there's you can cheat it various lengths depending on your muzzle device to get it to that legal length for civilian use in the U.S. But I shoot a lot of really short barrels. They're all registered, ATF approved. I file all the paperwork. It's not that big of a deal. But I like it for the handling characteristics. That my guns aren't necessarily lighter, but the weight is closer to me. And then as the sport kind of evolved from a really long-range SPR sport into a Baymatch CQB for military terms, stages where a lot of the shots are really close. You're working around a lot of barricades and stuff like that. I just like the shorter barrels better. And then also my job now, a lot of those customers like shorter barrels too. If you look at mil-LE sales of rifles, the most popular selling mil-LE SKUs are 10, 11-inch barrels.
Yep.
But to Reuben's point, on the long range stuff, I'm not afraid to shoot an SBR out to 500 yards, 550 yards. Dude, I've done it at matches. I one-shotted the long range targets at Wyoming.
Yep.
And I had a 14er in the car, but it was kind of like on the day, I was just like, I want to see if I can do it.
You're just gonna send it.
Just gonna send it. And then, the sport has also changed too. When we started, the rules were very hard set. You start with one rifle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that rifle is the rifle you have to shoot all the way through. Now,
well, UML is kind of compelling, right? Because now you can have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Bring that shorty for the shorty stages and the longy for the longy
stages.
stages.
Hard as hell when they told us. Well, Hard as Hell actually had that as a rule set, was you could switch uppers as long as it was the same cartridge.
Was that a trooper thing?
No. Any division.
No.
And like when I saw Andy Peterson had his little 14.5-inch upper with a red dot on it, I was like when he told me you could do that there, I was like, I feel dirty.
I know.
Like I felt like I was
breaking rules.
I was cheating on the other matches. Like,
but I think the thing we discovered, because I did struggle at one long range stage in particular last fall, and I think Reuben pointed it out that because everyone's always afraid to shoot long range with the short barrels, and they're afraid because of the loss of velocity. They think it's going to be harder. It's like, well, no, it's just a trajectory curve. You just got to learn what it is.
Right.
It's a little bit different. You just got to learn what it is. But what nobody talks about is the standard deviation.
Yes.
Of cartridge to shot to shot. How consistent are you? And that starts to spread out a little bit, I think, is what we found.
In shorter barrels?
Last fall. Yeah. Because you're talking about very, how consistent was that blended powder in that cartridge, and how consistent was that powder charge? And how did it, at this ambient temperature with this humidity, how consistently did it burn shot to shot to shot
in a shorter barrel?
Compared
to in a longer barrel.
Whereas a lot of that can even out if it has more time in the barrel to get a more complete burn on the powder. So I think that was some food for thought that we found last fall.
And a lot of times too, you don't see a big difference with 14.5s because if we're being honest, like a lot of the ammo, like let's just say you shoot 855 or you shoot 193, that ammo is probably developed for like 14.5-inch or 16-inch barrel. very few types of ammo out there are developed for 10.5, 12-inch barrels.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not what ammo is developed for. So
Right.
you're burning a lot. You're burning actually significantly less of that powder in the case. So when you say standard deviation, you can see numbers that are a lot higher in the shorter barrels.
And part of my experiment on the shorter barrels was, well, if I don't need that velocity to push the bullet to get a flatter trajectory if I'm just shooting bay matches, if I hit the compensator with that pressure instead, with all that unburnt flash at the end, would that make a compensator work better than if it came out of a longer barrel with a softer puff as it went out?
Yeah.
That was my theory at the time too. And so I think that plays into it as well. I was just using the burn for a different thing. But as we start to come inside 14 inches, you're starting to play with some variables that can swing one way or the other.
Yeah, and to Adam's point, I've talked to guys that have said, that doesn't have anything to do with it. The pressure coming out into the comp isn't nearly the same. Well, so then tell me, why do some suppressor companies say you can't shoot less than 10-inch barrel or less than a 7.5-inch barrel? Just
Really?
Because there's more pressure.
Huh.
So
Look at erosion of the muzzle brake
Oh, yeah.
on different lengths of barrel.
yeah, it's different. And some of that is because unburnt powder acts as an abrasive, but some of it is because the pressure is higher and shorter. So
Huh. Makes sense. I'm going to have to go look at that muzzle brake. Go compare between my 18-inch and my 13.5-inch rifle. Now I'm thinking,
you're thinking.
I'm trying to think, what do those look like?
Yeah.
Wish I had pictures. All right. So, we happy with that one?
I think we're good.
Okay.
At least gave you something to think about.
We've been here hour 15. You think we got one more in us?
I think we can do another one.
Okay. I like this one. Lanny Barnes posted this on Instagram and Facebook recently. Why don't we have spectators in practical shooting? And she posted a picture of a biathlon, which had a stadium full of people.
Yeah, quiet little 22s.
Yep. And thousands of cheering drunk fans shouting Barnes, Barnes, Barnes.
Yeah, that's something I think Three Gun Nation back in the day had to decide how would they make Three Gun, view, how would they make it more catered towards like an audience where you could watch it on TV, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of part of the evolution of like going to matches. Like the first couple seasons, you remember, we're all like, oh, we're filming live from this match, or we're at this match. And then it went to like, we're at our own match where we could set up our targets where we can get them with a camera. It's like,
They never really had any spectators, though.
oh, they had spectators on TV, but not in person, right?
Yeah,
So,
the point that Lanny was making was in-person spectators.
Yeah.
But like at the
to-
Nationals, though, when they were doing the Pro Series, there were people that came out. Like everyone who was shooting the match was there watching those 10 guys shoot.
They were already there.
But they could have been at a steakhouse.
Oh, that's true.
I think that the firearms sports that I think have spectators and attract spectators, the people that are watching have to be able to carry on a conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And you can't really do that with you can wear Active Ear Pro that, magnifies voices and cuts out the stuff that damages your hearing. But, you can't carry on a regular conversation when you're standing there and somebody's shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've all tried it when we're standing there talking and you look and the guy starts to shoot and you're like, all right, I'll just stop for a minute.
Yep.
So you're kind of by yourself if you're a spectator.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
I also think it's one of those sports, too, where it's like, if you're that close to it, if you're that interested in it, you want to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like, I guess golf. I mean, lots of people watch golf, but like,
Yeah, don't fucking get that.
but you gotta be into golf to
Golf
watch
is
golf.
so boring, though.
Whereas like I will passively watch MMA.
Yeah,
I don't
people
really
are getting
like
their
MMA.
butts beat.
I don't know who those
There's
guys
blood.
are.
But it also triggers part of your like monkey brain that tells you like something's happening over here. I need to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
It could also be that there's very little character development, I think, on behalf of, right now there's no unified rule set.
Yeah.
That's been attempted in the past. They're our match directors that said, no, you're not going to change my match. I've been doing it for 15 years. I'm not going to change it. And they're like, well, we're not asking you to change it. We're just asking if we can be affiliated. And then, so there's no unified rule set. So the sport on one side of the country is different than the sport on the other side. Because there's no unified rule set or unified body, I guess, that's maybe even reporting on it, right? Not even necessarily ruling it, just reporting on it. There's zero character development. So Three Gun Nation tried it in the beginning, and I understand that the podcast aspect of it, but like
for everyone else at home, I just pointed to the podcast recorder.
Yeah, but and that keeps developing too, right? Like your podcast changes over time. But I mean, looking at like Three Gun Nation, they started with some character development, and they would have interviews with the shooters before they would shoot, and then that just kind of went away.
Yeah,
and so then
it's like, who is this person? Why should I give a shit that they're shooting right now?
Yeah, I mean, I
don't have a horse to bet on.
You could put a video of Daniel Horner up on TV and a video of me up on TV, and we'd be, 5 seconds apart on the same stage, and somebody'd be like, "Oh, okay, well, why do I care about either of those guys? Which one was better?"
Yep.
Like, there's no story of how many world championships he's won versus me having won 0. Like, I think that there has to be something that people can follow aside from being on the range, right? So people have to be able to be like, "Oh, this was going on this last weekend, and how did this guy do?" There's zero character development in Three Gun, I wish. I've seen, and I wish there was, where people could follow along and see what's going on in the sport. But unless you go to that match, you're not going to go. I can tell you this, like, I wouldn't get in a car and drive across the country to watch a Three Gun match that I'm not going to shoot.
Yeah.
And I think Adam said it, like, there's a lot of people that just, rather than watch, they're going to compete.
People go to motocross, though.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch motocross on TV and online and follow the people that drive or ride.
Right.
And then when that tour comes to your town, you go and watch it. But like, there's zero unification in this, and like, I feel like there has to be something.
I get what you're saying. So you don't see it as like one specific event to go to. You see it as like a culture to be to follow, like a sport to follow, and then when it does come to your town or your arena or your range, then that's when you activate as a fan and go out and cheer on your favorite shooter.
Right. Like I'm not a traveling fan for watching hockey. I only pretty much watch the Wild on TV in St. Paul, hockey team. Right. So,
but if they were going to go play at like the Wisconsin Badgers arena over there, would you
that's
pay
a bad
$17?
analogy. Yeah, well, that's a bad analogy because their home team is in Minneapolis or in St. Paul, and we live here, and so they would be away here.
Right.
But if they were based here, yeah, I mean, I go and watch them there.
Right. But that's what I'm saying is, like, if they were playing some sort of exhibition game at the college, which isn't too far, what is it, about an hour and 10 minutes from here?
Yeah, 45 minutes.
45 minutes? So you'd pay $17 to go sit in a seat and watch it? Okay.
Yeah, we don't have professional hockey here in Wisconsin. It's just
I got
collegiate.
But, yeah.
So, but yeah, like if you lived in Cave City, Kentucky, what's your local Three Gun? You got Pro-Am, you got Blue Ridge. Mm-hmm. Well, neither of those are a part of a bigger circuit.
Right.
So that's the only, if you're there and there isn't somewhere you can watch those people somewhere else as they're traveling the rest of the country shooting, are you going to be like, oh man, they're coming in one event a year or 2 events a year? Are you going to follow the sport? No.
Well, that's a very good point. And then if everything is a championship, championships don't mean anything. It's like if everyone's special, no one's special. And so if every single weekend there's a championship, are they really that important? That's what I always wonder. And then if they're not tied to each other in any sort of way, there's no sort of points race or anything like that.
Yeah. So I mean, like we have what is the big thing up at Canterbury, the snowcross thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. There's
ice hockey, snowcross.
Yeah, so it's huge, but that's part of a big tour. Like, and when I'm in St. Paul in the winter, like I go and watch crashed ice. That's a Red Bull event where they downhill skate.
Yep.
Not downhill ski, they downhill skate.
That's awesome.
But that's part of a tour. So the whole year I can watch them go to Finland and Norway and Winnipeg, and then
watch on Red Bull TV.
And then when they come to St. Paul, I go and watch them live. Well, at that point, I'm a spectator. If I'm watching on TV, I'm not a spectator. So spectators, I think, have to be live. And you can't be a spectator if there is no outlet for you to watch them on TV or on the internet.
Yeah. And so I think you get into a little bit of the suppression of, gun culture
Right.
in media. I mean, because like last year around the Shotgun World Shoot, I mean, the battle between Freilich and Green was probably on par with any athletic battle in any sport.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was world class and
Especially
it was close.
like Olympic style sports, right?
Yeah, but you couldn't really watch it. I mean, like Three Gun Show was the closest thing you had to it to monitoring it, and you only get spot checks.
Yeah, and we only got to talk to him like afterwards.
Yeah, and whereas like part of what I connect with in action shooting sports is the kind of the subculture. That subculture is in motocross too, but in motocross you can watch Trey Kennard and Jeremy Stenberg and all those. You can watch them practicing during the week, like they're putting up stuff during the week, and it's the same death-defying stuff that they're doing, otherwise. But there's kind of that they build the whole story around it, whereas it's hard for us to build that story when the outlets that put out that, or the mediums that we put out those stories on are somewhat restricting on, so it's kind of this really cool thing if you can find it. Mm-hmm. Is kind of, I think,
that's a good way to look at it. That's a good way to say it. It's an awesome thing if you can find it. But
Three Gun, it's an awesome thing if you can find it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a really good way of putting it.
I mean, you would never know USPSA is active in an area, but if you're a USPSA shooter,
you
move into an area, you can find it, and those are the same people with different names that were where you came from.
I cannot tell you how many people will DM me on Instagram all the time, like, hey, I'm looking for Three Gun, and I don't see anything in my area, and I've looked and looked and looked, and I don't think they shoot Three Gun in Indiana. Like, are you kidding me? Have you heard the Indiana multi-gun series? Like,
right.
There's 8 ranges involved in that,
I live in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
And that, like, the Three Gun Show is doing amazing things for the sport. And I hate to sometimes say it, but you're kind of like, you're one of the only outlets that are really trying hard.
Yeah.
to
provide like consistent 3-gun focused content. You know, like
I feel like I'm dragging a donkey uphill sometimes.
Well, but like look at the NFL, right? The NFL is the biggest version of this.
But
how many people does that employ?
See, that's the thing I was just sitting here thinking about and not saying because it's kind of disconcerting. It's like, you know, I'm only one guy and I can't do near enough. But you know, there's got to be some sort of way to bust through the traditional media and show it on the interwebs.
Well,
but as one dude, that's really hard to do.
I think that, you know, there are other organizations, there are other, and people will be very quick to say that, like, oh, it's all shooting sports, like everybody hates guns, and like I'll say this, like I think it's August that the Minnesota high school trap and skeet championships are in Alexandria, Minnesota.
Yep.
That's covered on the news. The story isn't about like, it's not an anti-gun story. It's the story about like all these kids that shoot trap and skeet, and it's the biggest sport in the state. And so I think there's a difference. Like we're shooting AR-15s, which are scary, right? But like in those
Mine is
high schools, yeah, mine's got an attitude. Let me tell you
yeah.
what. That thing
Yours looked at me
talks
funny
back.
earlier.
Yeah.
Mine's a registered offender.
ATF knows the phone number to your house.
No, I don't.
But yeah, I think that like, but there's an organization there that is kind of like standardizing a lot of things.
Yeah.
Right?
And helping to push it forward.
And 3-Gun has tried it several different ways. I mean, I'll be honest, like Adam and I both have put a lot of our personal stake into hoping that UML really grows fast and gains a pretty good foothold and kind of becomes that, you know, that kind of that body that can kind of unify the sport and bring everybody together. And I think that Pete's got an awesome vision for that, and we've you know, both worked very hard on personal projects and then and hoping to see that continues to move forward. But I think that if you look at like PRS, right, people will say like, well, PRS is doing so good because they have one organization. It's like, no, PRS
There's
has
like 13 of them.
PRS and NRL, And then there's some other, smaller.
They still have like a ton of outlaw stuff too.
There is, but they actually have a pretty strong between PRS and NRL. It covers a lot of it.
Okay.
And I think that like there's the Border Wars Rifle Series, right? That's its own kind of thing. But now that's run by NRL, at least to my knowledge. So we have to be able to at least talk about coming together as a sport and realizing that you don't need to change your rules. You don't need to add 100 different divisions to every match, right? Like, but we need some way of not standardizing everything, but like having some common ground. I mean, we all do the same thing for Pete's sake.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's been one of my biggest frustrations in getting into the media side of Three Gun is that there is really no cohesion. USPSA doesn't seem to give a shit about multi-gun other than the one match a year that they're forced to put on. They don't care about like long gun sports. Three Gun Nation turned out to be like not exactly what I thought it was when I came into the shooting sports. But you're right. Like I do think that UML is doing really cool things. They have an awesome attitude about it, welcoming. We can all do this together attitude.
Bringing in shotgun shooting sports, bringing in pistol shooting sports, PCC shooting sports, like providing a kind of a system that allows people to kind of bring what you have and compete with it.
It's a rule set that can govern all the matches that we've ever gone to,
and
without changing them.
Yep. And to circle back, Dave, on the original question of why isn't Three Gun a spectator sport, or why don't we have spectators? I think the thing that I always come back to is that in every type of sport out there, there's some type of pro tour or some type of like pro tour, semi-pro tour, something that classifies people that can say like, this dude's a really good shooter. This girl is a really good shooter, right? Top of the line, they've proven themselves at this level. Well, if we have like 4 different organizations that say, well, you're a pro, but you're only a sharp shooter or whatever, and you're a semi-pro, but like, but you look at those based on knowing those people that have shot it and being like, well, I've seen that guy. I'm not quite sure that he's a semi-pro. I think he's actually probably shooting at a higher level than that thing classifies him at, right?
He just won this match, and he's a semi-pro.
Yeah, exactly. And so you can't have a pro tour if there's 5 different organizations saying what's a pro and what's not a pro.
Right.
Unless one of those organizations has a ton of money and is putting out all the content, then really then we need some sort of kind of, when I say unification, I'm not saying like everybody has to give up their unique rule sets that they've worked for their legacy matches for 20 years. What I'm saying is like be willing to do something for the betterment of the sport.
Right. Sacrifice yourself a little bit for the betterment of the sport.
I don't think it's even a sacrifice.
I don't think it is. I think it's just
I don't think it
sacrifice
is.
your ego, maybe.
Yeah,
I think it is because
totally.
it is an ego.
Sacrifice your ego for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because most of the people who push back, most of the people that I encountered who pushed back on Three Gun Nation at the time and push back on UML now, they haven't read the rules.
Yeah. And Adam was a
different.
big Three Gun Nation supporter.
Right.
I wanted it bad.
I think as a lot of people were, Adam was among the most in support of that and wanting it to work out. And I think that torch has kind of been passed to other individuals that are like have the same focus for unifying the sport.
I think though, from my perspective, UML comes at it from a more altruistic point of view, rather than you will submit, you will all get under our rules.
Pete goes out of his way to say like, what can we do?
Yeah.
What can we do to keep your match the same so that it benefits you however it has benefited you, whether it be financially, whether it be having a legacy name of a match and having that under your belt. But he's done a great job of saying like to match directors, what can we do to like be a part of what you have going on, but to also have your match help out the sport as a whole.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, in UML, you get as many points for participating as you do for shooting well.
Yep.
You know,
Participating.
You become a voting member of UML by participating, at various levels.
Yeah,
And by shooting a match, you get
experience points.
You get experience points. If by ROing a match, you get more experience points than someone who shoots. And by match directing,
participate is a loaded is a loaded word in this sport.
We're not giving out trophies to everybody, but what he's saying is that if you're a part of what's going on, you will be able to use that to further help the direction of the sport, and have input into the direction of the sport. So
it's like a structured way to have a council of elders sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're going to start a match, it would behoove you to go speak to a set of people who have done it for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. And this is just a way to put a number on that.
But if you want input into the direction of IPSC or USPSA or IDPA or PPC, good luck.
Yeah, you have to get voted in.
Yeah. Good luck. Whereas here, there's at least a structure in place that you can, if you're really into it and you really put some effort into the sport, like you actually have something to contribute.
And I look at some of the matches that have popped up over the years, and I give props to the companies and organizations that have backed these things. Looking back, you had the NRA World Shooting Championships, which was formerly the Trijicon World Shooting Championships. And Trijicon came out and was like, among other people, were like, we want to crown the best overall shooter in the world, right?
Which is a cool idea, right?
It's a great concept, but it was also one of those things where if you were signing up for that, I mean, you're signing up for another match, right? It wasn't like the top shooters in every sport were shooting this thing and you were seeing who the best. Well, you had to pay for it. So I think if you can create some sort of...
It's like the World Shoot. We don't send our best people. We send the people that have $3,000 to go over there.
And I think that, are there some fantastic shooters in the group of people that get selected?
Yes.
Yes, there are. Most of them probably better than me. So I'm not even going to talk to their skill level. But what I will say is this. I think that if you can create some sort of standardization in scoring, let's just say, or comparing a guy on the West Coast to a guy on the East Coast to a guy in the North and a guy in the South. If you can create that, then you can, over time, it'll take time, but you can find out really who the best of the best are. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to have, let's just say, a world championship or a national championship, now you can pull from that pool of people who are bona fide the best of the best. And then when you go to a company and somebody writes me a sponsorship email and they're like, hey, we're throwing the world championship together. I'm like, okay, how are you determining who's going to compete? It's like, well, whoever has $500 is going to compete. Okay, I'm going to tell you this. It's probably not going to be all the best people. So am I going to back that as much as a company when I think that the coverage on that might vary one way or the other? Like, no, I'm probably not going to put as much into it if I'm not quite sure that that's the best way to rank people.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There you go.
All right. Okay, well, this was enlightening, gentlemen. This was a good discussion. Thanks for being here.
If you have more questions, submit them to 3 Gun Show.
Oh, yeah. Let's try this again. Thanks, Adam.
The views expressed here are not necessarily in line with the management and ownership of Vortex Optics.
I second that statement.
I like that one. But yeah, so for the audience listening, this is something that we're going to do more often as I travel around the country. I'm just going to snag good people who have good opinions and put them in front of the microphones and answer your questions. So if you do have questions, leave them in a comment on 3gunshow.com. It's probably the best place for it. That's where I'll find them. Thanks, dudes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Bye.
Bye, buddy. Bye-bye.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.